You're listening to the British Grand Prix preview podcast on Formula 1 FanCast. To keep up to date with the latest Formula 1 news, visit www.formula1fancast.com, and you can also follow us on Twitter at Formula 1 FanCast.
Well, with just under a week to go, thousands of Formula 1 fans will be heading to Silverstone for this year's eagerly anticipated British Grand Prix. The last two races at Silverstone have seen Red Bull come out on top. Will that change? Well, we'll find out this weekend. And here with me to preview the British Grand Prix, I'm pleased to say, is Will Vincent. How are you, Will?
Hi, how you doing?
I'm not too bad. Will, I believe you've got some news about Virgin Racing and McLaren.
Yeah. Pretty much, Virgin Racing have come to an agreement with McLaren for kind of like a technical partnership. In the same way that, in a way, Red Bull, Toro Rosso, they're pretty much, work together technical-wise, even though they're sponsored by the same company, whatever. But it will basically mean that Virgin will have access to all of the McLaren, engineering facilities, and they'll be able to use stuff like the test rig, the wind tunnel, so on and so forth. But also remembering that they bought the facilities from Worth Technologies, who they split with a few months back, so they've got access to those facilities themselves as well. They've had a pretty disappointing season this year, to be fair. I think people expected them to be the best of the three teams, but they've been lagging behind quite a lot, especially the last few races. They've really not been on the pace.
And there have been times where even Hispania have beaten Virgin.
Yeah, the last few races Hispania have been better than them. And I think they really did need that step forward. To start, moving forward. And who knows? They still got their Cosworth deal at the minute, but it could be, that Mercedes might be looking to put yet another engine in the back of another car.
Well, coming on to the British Grand Prix, Will, how much are you looking forward to the Grand Prix weekend at Silverstone?
A lot, actually, a really lot. Silverstone's always been one of those races. It hosted the first ever World Championship race in history. And it's still one of those tracks that has so much character. Yes, it's flat as a pancake, but seeing the cars go through Beckett's and Maggots, down to Stowe Corner, down the Hanger Straight, and then places like Abbey Chicane, going to Cosman and all that, it's just one of the best Grand Prix tracks there is, full stop.
And no doubt it's one of the favourite tracks amongst the drivers.
Yeah, it always has been. You used to hear people complain about the facilities, or people complaining about how difficult it is to get there, but you never ever heard anyone complain about the actual racing itself. I don't think I've ever seen that.
Well, you just mentioned facilities there. The new Silverstone wing's now in place. Wing itself pretty unique, isn't it, compared to the paddocks at the other circuits?
Yeah, it is. I remember reading that it's going to be really interesting coming onto pit lane, mainly because of the fact that it's separated from the track, and you get pretty much going faster into Abbey Chicane. You almost had to take another corner to get into pit lane, and the actual pit lane itself is lower than the track itself, so that presents its own challenges as well, stuff like dust laying onto pit lane and so on and so forth.
Well, as I mentioned in the introduction, Red Bull have won the last two races at Silverstone. Can you see them making it 3 out of 3?
Definitely. I think that, I wouldn't say Vettel will win it, hands down, but one of them will do. Webber's always been strong at this track, as well as the Red Bull combination.
You've mentioned Mark Webber. Would you say this is his best chance to get a race win this year?
Yes and no. There are still a number of tracks on the calendar where I think he is really strong. Last year, remember we all said, not bad for number 2 driver when he won the race. And this is one of those tracks where he really does feel at home. If he's going to win a race, this is probably one of his 3 best opportunities.
Me and Paul Hadley were talking in the last podcast about Webber needing that race win. But he also needs a weekend where he can dominate his teammate in qualifying and in the race, doesn't he?
Well, yeah. The issue is, Sebastian Vettel is, hands down, the best one-lap qualifying specialist there is. And because of that, he makes his life so easy for the fact that he can charge into the head, 2-3 seconds ahead by the end of lap 1, and then pretty much dominate the racing pace. Whereas Webber, if he can just break that dock once, I think you'll see, not only will Webber then get that extra boost in confidence, it'll also put Vettel under so much pressure, because he's not really been under pressure that much this season. And we saw in Canada what happens when you put an amount of pressure on him. He can still lose it. And I think if Webber can get into that position where he can pressurise Vettel for the entire weekend, then there is a very good chance that, he could come out on top.
But it's still fair to say that Vettel and Red Bull are still in complete control, aren't they?
Oh yeah, definitely. Simple as that. There's no arguing that at all. I think the issue is as well is that, McLaren and Ferrari are pretty much fighting it between themselves to be the second best teams at the minute. But while they're fighting with each other, Red Bull's just putting further and further away, and by the end of the season it could be that they might as well just have their own little race.
Well, there's three British drivers on this year's grid, and the last time a Brit won the British Grand Prix was in 2008 when Lewis Hamilton delivered a masterclass in wet weather driving. Last time out, Lewis finished 4th in the European Grand Prix. He'll be hoping for better this weekend.
Well, yeah, I think he's commented at the European Grand Prix, that he's not going to change his driving style. And Silverstone's one of those places that if you are going to be aggressive, then you can make the moves. You all remember, those fantastic overtaking manoeuvres like Mansell PK, and I think Hamilton did one himself down the straight. I mean, if you are that aggressive, you can make the moves there, and it's very easy to move through the field because there is overtaking opportunities at Silverstone. So he has got a chance to do better here.
Well, Jenson Button was certainly brought back down to earth in Valencia. Button could only finish 6th, and Jenson, along with Lewis, will be hoping for a strong weekend at Silverstone.
Oh yeah, I think Valencia was never one of those tracks that suited Button anyway. I think all he wanted to do was finish the race, and that was it. I mean, at the same time, Red Bull was saying how this is more McLaren track and more Ferrari track than their track, and then you see how far Red Bull romped away at the end. But I think Button will be looking for a stronger showing here, and he'll need to be focusing first on beating his teammate and beating the Ferraris, and then just hoping that the Red Bull slip up somewhere.
Just talking about the Valencia track, Paul Hasler was telling me last week that he would take the track off the calendar. Would you be in favour of that?
In a heartbeat. Let's remember when they put Valencia on, it's the same reason why they put 2 races in Germany on, to capitalise on the popularity of Fernando Alonso when they first capitalised the popularity of Michael Schumacher. I think that Spain's got a big honouring now to have just one race that will completely sell out. I think having 2 races in such a short period of time, first of all, is a bit ridiculous when you've got new markets struggling to get races at the minute. And then also the fact that Valencia is pretty much the most boring track there is in Formula 1 right now. Full stop. I mean, it makes the Hungaroring look exciting. Yeah. I think really, it's been a good opportunity. It'll still work quite in low Formula A, but not for Formula 1.
Well, coming back onto Jenson, his winning Canada will obviously be his highlight of the year so far. How would you sum up his season?
I think, seeing as it's been such a Red Bull dominance, I think he would be quietly happy, but at the same time disappointed with how he's been so far. He's had some amazing results, but at the same time there has been races when Lewis has outperformed him, and I think as they were talking on BBC last week, he really does need to improve in his qualifying. He saw on his championship winning year with Braun that was what almost cost him the championship, the fact that he can't seem to put together that one really, really quick lap. And if there's one thing he really does need to improve on, that is his qualifying by far, and I think he won't get many more race wins this season until he does that.
And I believe Jenson, I don't think he's finished on the podium before at the British Grand Prix, so that'll be something he wants to put right, won't he?
Well, yeah. I think Jenson falls foul to the whole pressure situation a lot more than Lewis, I think. Obviously, he's been in Formula 1 since 2000. He's never managed to produce that result at the British Grand Prix, even like when he was doing well in BAR and Honda and then at Braun, now at McLaren. It's always been one of those few races where it's been like his lame duck. I think Schumacher had one as well. I think Austria, that he never managed to produce a really good finish for a number of years. Every driver seems to have one. It's just a bit unfortunate that Button's is his home track.
Force India's Paul Di Resta will be making his Formula 1 debut at the British Grand Prix, and racing at Silverstone for any Brit is bound to be special, isn't it?
Well, yeah, and for Paul, after the season he's so far, he really could be the underdog to watch this weekend. Especially also if it rains again, because I think he's got some very good wet weather driving skills, and obviously rain is always a bit of a level playing field. And I think that if it is wet, he'll definitely do a good result. Even if it's dry, he'll definitely get a top 10.
Well, this season Di Resta's only scored 2 points, but there have been races where he has been unlucky not to score points.
Well, yeah. You could pretty much say he is the best rookie in Formula 1 right now. Obviously, you can't really count Kobayashi because he raced in the last few races last season. But out of all the rookies we have this year, Perez, Maldonado, Di Resta, your big, really 3 rookies. And out of the 3, I think he's been the most consistent, and that's what's important if you're going to be a rookie in Formula 1. It's great having, a top 5 or a podium, but then doing rubbish for the rest of the season. You need to have that consistency.
Well, Di Resta's inexperience did show at Canada and Monaco, but nonetheless he's made a good start to this year.
He has, definitely, and I think as well is that he admits that he's got a lot to learn. I mean, you know, for example, Canada is a track that don't really race in other Formula A, so going to a new track like that is always difficult to learn, especially as Canada is probably one of the most challenging tracks on the calendar. And obviously you mentioned Monte Carlo as well, where it seems to be rookies either do amazingly well at it or stuff it in the wall, per to say. But I think he's done really well so far. Yes, his inexperience has come through, but I think if he just settles down again, gets his rhythm, because he did in the first few races, he'll be fine.
And on occasions this year, he's already given his teammate Adrian Sutil a run for his money, isn't he?
That and a little bit more. I mean, it's been impressive to see him racing, full stop. I think, you know, Sutil hasn't necessarily got anything to worry about, but because I think he's got a safe seat at Force India for a while now, but for Di Resta, it really is a good chance, you know, show other teams how he's doing. If he does work Force India for the next, you know, this year, next year, he's got a very good chance of moving up to one of the bigger teams, full stop.
But no doubt Lewis, Jenson and Di Resta will be hoping to give the British fans something to cheer about.
Oh yeah, and for Di Resta as well, I mean, it's taken him so long to get into Formula 1. He's been the nearly man for so many years now, and the fact that he's finally got into F1, I mean, it's just going to make this British Grand Prix even more special for him.
You were going to give us a prediction, top three?
Webber, from Hamilton, from Vettel.
I'll give you my top three. Webber, Button, Alonso.
Oh.
So no Sebastian Vettel in the top three, surprisingly. Will, thank you very much for coming in to preview the British Grand Prix. And that's the end of our podcast. Cheerio.
Bye-bye.
To keep up to date with the latest Formula 1 news, visit www.formula1fancast.com, and you can also follow us on Twitter at Formula1 FanCast.